January 13th, 2020. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustees Brown.
Here.
Hazen. Hersey.
Here.
Jacobson.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Roberts.
Here.
Wu.
Here.
Chair Marlin.
Here. Next up is minutes from the previous meeting. It would be the meeting of December 9th, 2019, and the public hearing from the same date. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Jared, seconded by Mary Alice. Are there any corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion passes. Are there any additions to the agenda? Public participation. I haven't received any slips. Looks like there's none. Committee to verify bills, town fund, and general assistance fund. Danielle.
Good evening and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
So this month we had $69,749.27 in the town fund in expenditures from the town fund, and $45,933.61 in expenditures from the general assistance fund. The total was $115,678.88.
Any questions for Danielle?
I'll move approval.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Moved by Mary Alice, seconded by Dennis. Discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion passes. Reports of officers for the mid-year financial report.
So I'll just give a few highlights that were in my memo, and then we'll talk about the financial report. So general assistance, the good news is that we really leveled off. We were topping 100 last year. We're really at 91 participants, up from 90 last month. We're seeing a pretty consistent, about a third of those participants are homeless, 28. It's half male, half females, no transgender, non-conforming participants. We do ask that now in the application. Average age pretty much hovers at my age and of 47, and the total served, and I've started to track this, and I'm hoping to have more kind of robust graphics for you going forward so that you can look at trends. But total served the whole fiscal year of unique individuals as 189. So essentially we've seen a once turnover, like we have about 90. We've served 189, and it's a mixture of people getting employment and those who are moving out of town or not participating in community work program. Rental assistance, we had a large push through on rental assistance, 14 higher than average last month, and then we dropped down, and that's partly because we processed our rental assistance first, and then we caught up on general assistance. So we only had 2 eviction prevention cases. We've been working and I'll have some hard data, but essentially we're halfway through assessing all of our participants' housing status. So we're assigning a unique housing or a specific housing status of, emergency crisis, unstable, or stable, and then there's kind of fine grain in that. And what we're seeing is about so far the people that we've marked half of our participants, and about a third of them are in subsidized housing, and largely that's because of the work of our office. So they did not start out in subsidized housing, but we've been working very hard prioritizing the homeless residents to move into subsidized housing. Steer Place has had openings throughout the year, and we moved a number of folks into housing. In fact, we did an outreach to the community this last week because we had a gentleman who was homeless for 8 years. He moved into housing and he had nothing, and the community gave us a bed, a TV, a microwave, household goods, and we delivered the bed today and saw that he was pretty well set up. So thank you to Urbana for coming forward and responding to our request for items for this homeless participant. Formerly homeless participant. I also wanted to point out that we, as you know, have launched an angel donor fund, and we did a very, HTO Salon approached us last fall with the desire to run a campaign amongst their customers We ran a very modest social media campaign, and we have received $8,106.37 so far. And individuals are still giving online here. In fact, I got a donation right before I came to the meeting. So people can give online. 100% of that will go to support homeless families or residents in crisis in Urbana, and it's directly to meet their material needs. So there's no administrative fees. So I listed a couple of folks that we had helped. We have one really fantastic success story just from this last month where we had a man with multiple criminal convictions. We accessed RPC's Job Club. We have a partnership with them, and there's a club that they go through and they learn how to build resumes and do interview skills. The assessor's office helped him establish a work record by hiring him as an assistant to deal with a backlog of scanning. That was last summer. And then essentially we helped him hire, when that finished, a part-time fast food job, which was not great, but we continued to support him in getting hired full-time at a grocery store. The issue that came up just 2 weeks ago is he didn't have a uniform, and he didn't have funds for his uniform, which he had to purchase. So angel donor funds went to purchase that uniform. And he actually told me last week that looking at that uniform helps him get up and go to work every day. So thanks to the people of Urbana and the community for supporting our angel donor fund. General assistance changes. We are changing things in the new year. I was concerned with a large spike in cases over the summer, so I didn't change the assistance allocation until the budget had leveled off. As you'll see in our financial report, we're just at that 55% sweet spot, which is where we should be. I am increasing our standard assistance up to $300. This is in response to IDHS recommendations and also the recommendations of the supervisors of Illinois. It also closely matches the City of Champaign assistance levels. With that, we increase the work hours that are required from 20 to 24. That roughly represents, actually it's not roughly, it exactly represents $12.50 an hour. We are ensuring that people whose cases are closed, if they don't do their hours, must actually complete their hours before they can reapply. We have a housing cohort that we have launched of formerly homeless women, and they are here to help inform our policies and advise the township and also tell their stories to a wider audience. We had a December 7th exhibit with over 100 people in attendance. There's actually a video link if you'd like to watch some of the testimony. It's quite moving. The YMCA, University YMCA, reached out to us and asked us to repeat the exhibit. So I'd like to make a warm invitation to all of our town board members to join us Thursday, January 30th, from 5 to 7 p.m. at the University YMCA. There will be an opening with some spoken word, and you'll get to meet some members of our cohort. We're also gathering donations of winter outerwear, and we will continue to do that through the cold months. So please do bring your coats and hats and gloves and mittens by if you can. So that concludes the supervisor's memo. Is there any questions about that content before we move on to the financial report?
Dennis?
Yeah, I just was curious about the individual who had been homeless for 8 months, or 8 years rather, and did that person live in Urbana at all this time?
Yeah, I mean, essentially folks who are homeless move throughout Champaign and Urbana, but he was homeless in Urbana at the time that he got on general assistance.
Oh, but before also? He had been?
Yes,
yeah.
yes, he's a community member. He's from here. As are honestly most of the people we work with. They're from our community. And there's, a number of folks that we've worked with who are chronically homeless. Might be
that's a
2,
long run.
3, 5, 8 years. I worked with a woman who's been homeless for 10 years in Champaign, Urbana.
Great success then for that man.
Yeah, we had a huge celebration at staff meeting on Friday. We were so happy for him.
And does it work out really well that they go into housing that's provided either through HUD or through the programs rather than finding individual apartments? Do you find people prefer the stability that offers, or does it matter to people?
Well, I think, some people would prefer a housing choice voucher. The openings for that are very rare. As you might recall, the last opening was 3 weeks. There were only 1,500 people who could be placed on the wait list, and 5,200 households applied in a 3-week period. And the list can take up to 6 years for you to be placed in housing. So there are other housing opportunities that are specifically for people with disabilities or seniors. And what we're seeing is the homeless individuals aging into the senior housing, and then the voucher becomes available to them through either directly through HUD or more often through the housing authority. So Steer Place is specifically for seniors and the disabled.
Okay, thanks.
And honestly, we've heard nothing but great things about Steer Place from the participants. They are so incredibly happy. They are in tears when they get into Steer Place. It is like hitting, winning the jackpot. So, I think I've been to a funeral at Steer Place, and I go over there. I've been there multiple times, and I think there's a real sense of community at that location.
Any other questions? Would you like to give the online where donations can be made?
Sure. Well, thank you, Diane. It's cunninghamtownship.org, and on the side panel, you'll see a link to the Angel Donor Fund, and we did have one town board member contribute, but I haven't gotten his permission to say his name, but thank you. We really appreciate the community support, and especially H2O Salon. We just sent them a big thank you card.
All right, shall we move on to the financial report then?
Sure. So the financial report is actually more pedestrian than most. We're doing great. I'm going to highlight the places. There's just a few places where we're over, say, a 60-ish% where I would consider it would be worth noting. First off, income-wise, the SSI efforts that we are doing are paying off. We're almost at 200% of our budget, and we're only 55% through the year. Community generosity means that our donation level is over 200% of our budget, so it's just fantastic. And then payroll expenses, we're over because we've been putting our direct deposit of payroll there. That's, the budget was $616 and we're at $1,000. So essentially, that just reflects the direct deposit of payroll. The travel is over. It's 88%, although the training is under at 19%. I think when you saw this at the quarterly report, it's partly because of the way that we've been billed. We've been putting more under travel than training, but essentially if you balance, those two balance each other out. Our legal fees are at 110%. That's one area of particular interest. And I think Wayne can speak in part to that because it has a lot to do with the hospital exemption cases, including the continuance of, I know there were continued documentation in this fiscal year for Carl and then the OSF case. The current OSF case and the historic, I believe it's Presence case. The dues and, accounting, we're at 170%, and it's because our accounting support, so I now have an accountant coming in quarterly to basically help us do a quarterly close of the books. And honestly, I think that should most likely be allocated to to admin services, which are under, they're at 12%. So those two balance each other out, the audit services and the admin services, but they include both the audit and accounting. Our annual insurance is paid up front, so it's 100%, but we don't pay anything more. And then there were two contracts that we paid out. Honestly, we paid them out in June. It hit the books. We've authorized in June. They hit the books in July, and they're for last fiscal year. Otherwise, we're fine. And then I will point out it's only at 62%, but it is high under work and training supplies. We have a very high demand for bus passes. It's a game changer for our participants, but we are seeing a higher demand than expected for the MTD bus passes. I'm happy to answer any questions, but those are all the items where we're over that 60 or so %.
Mary Alice.
Thank you. You hit upon a lot of my questions, so thank you for that.
Sure.
Good overview. The only other pending one I have is utilities. Obviously, we need utilities, so it's not like we can cut back on that, but I'm just curious if you had an idea on why we're at about 85%.
Utilities, we're only at 56%.
Oh,
If
maybe
you
I'm
look
looking-
at the total.
I'm
Which,
just looking at the page 8 here.
let me see, you might be looking at,
The wrong area. which
yeah,
is
you're
highly
looking at town
possible.
fund. It's the, we allocated more utilities to town fund than GA, and we'll typically balance that out over the year so that it's 50-50. But if you look at the total budget of GA town fund combined, we're at 56.
Okay.
And it is the case that our Ameren bills are too high, so we had an energy assessment done. I think that was actually last fiscal year, and we've been in the process of making changes. We got programmable thermostats, and we've been able to bring our bills down from about $500 a month to closer to $380, $390 a month. So hopefully we'll see some additional savings there.
So good work on the SSI reimbursements.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome that we've doubled that amount that we've recuperated. Do we have an estimate in terms of the amount that is pending?
Well, it's tricky. I would say that's not estimatable because it can take between 6 months and 10 years to get on SSI. And so what we've just been doing is through our SOAR trained advocates. So I have 2 members of my staff who are trained in the SOAR process. And so we're able to help advise and coach people in the submissions. We also work with Land of Lincoln, and they do provide free legal services for appeals of SSI. And so we had them present at our staff meeting, and we've kind of linked up that process so that people have legal help. That also means they don't end up having to pay a lawyer 25% of their check when they receive their check. So all 100% of their check then goes to the participants. So it's kind of been win-win across the board, and hopefully I can increase the budget on that for next year.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, moving on. Any unfinished business?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, the assessor
sorry.
had a report as well. Excuse me.
So actually, William is going to deliver the assessor report, and I can answer any questions.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi.
Long time. Okay. First, I want to start by saying Happy New Year.
Pull your mic in.
Happy New Year to you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good.
Okay. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Today, I officially made a year in your community, so I'm kind of excited. The first thing I kind of want to really discuss is creating mass assessments without information. And the reason I say that, it's kind of similar to building a car or working on a car without having tools. I don't know if anybody's ever tried it. Sometimes slightly impossible, depending on how MacGyver-ish you can be. One of the things that we use in Georgia is something called Eagle View. And that's where they use these flights that pass over, and they give you your overview flights. They give you oblique imagery, which is from the sides. So a lot of times, if you can't get out to a property to verify some type of information, if you need a quick on-the-spot kind of an answer to kind of sway an opinion on something, you could view it right online. Now, in Georgia, they did these flights kind of like every year, but they would do it during like the fall. So the trees would kind of be bare, so you could see the house, the complete surrounding of the house. One of the benefits of a software like this is you could also sketch a property directly from their software. So last week, there was a particular property that Wayne asked me to go view because he thought the card was wrong. Well, when you look using your Google imagery or anything, oh, it looks like the card is right. We thought the house was a one-story house. It wasn't a one-story house. It's a 1.25. No, it wasn't a 1.25. There was almost a complete second story on this particular property. And the garage had been added on to. Information that we wouldn't have known because these permits were from years ago. They did take out these permits which were closed, so it's in the office saying, okay, this job is done, but nobody collected the information. So now when we're going out to verify the information, we're kind of working harder because we're getting out here thinking, okay, these cards aren't matching up to what we're seeing, so it's causing us to have to resketch all new sketches as we go to these properties. So it's kind of making us a little slower than where I thought we would be. A few benefits, because I kind of had the time today to sit and think of what were the benefits that helped me in using EagleView. And a lot of those benefits came from saving time. Just the thought of, okay, if there are 30 properties I need to look at today, I could drive those 30 properties, but will I have enough time to get back and put all that information into the system? Versus if I was sitting in front of a computer and I could pull up that house while still in the system, saying, okay, it has this particular issue, or there was an addition done. That's why these values are higher. Because typically we see this when we start validating sales. We'll notice that, okay, a property went from 150,000 to 220,000. To decide, the job we're tasked with, is that market growth, or was there a change to the property? And a lot of times you don't know this information because we don't have access to MLS listings. We don't have access to the interior of a lot of these homes. So it's a lot of speculations going on, and I just think if we could find different systems, different programs to kind of help us with this information, feed the information into the system, we could actually create better assessments, more fair, complete assessments for the citizens. Those are my benefits of, I would say, EagleView. One of the great things I would like to talk about is the soft launch. We are, can I say the first? Would that what you would say, the first in Champaign County as far as, okay, we would be the first in Champaign County to be able to provide our property record cards online digitally. We've actually already done the soft launch. We're hoping by the later end of this month to be completely active, but a lot of that is the information going into that system. I wrote down a few things that, as we sent out surveys asking what type of information people would like to see online, to kind of cut back staff time from answering phones, spending a lot of time on emails, because in trying to do these reval, I kind of need all hands on deck. And if you spend 20 minutes answering a phone call, that was 20 minutes somebody could have been helping me with the property. But they asked for things like bathroom count, year built, square footage, foundation type, condition type. I would like to be able to pull a lot of this information from these property record cards, but it's me putting information that I'm not sure of out online just to give them something. And I would rather give them the appropriate information. That's why we were saying, okay, the EagleView, as far as why that would be one of many softwares, and I won't say one of many softwares, but it's one software that I believe could bring benefit to the Cunningham Township. The soft launch, as far as the website, will be available to the public soon. So if you're curious on what year your house is built, we're getting out there trying to figure it out. So that'll be something you can see, or bedroom counts, bathroom counts. If anyone on the board or any taxpayers at home listening, you have concerns, or there are certain things you probably want to see on this website, we're open to input as we're creating this, going along this journey.
I've got a question.
Go ahead.
Dennis?
Yes, and would also the person who's looking through these new property record cards be able to find things like sale prices, the last sale that occurred at the property, how many years ago was the sale? Would they be able to find out current property value and things like this? And would,
Oh, go ahead.
yeah, and then also, I mean, you could answer that one first.
So right now, it'll have the last 3 years. So if a property sold within the last 3 years, that'll be on there.
Okay, it doesn't go back any farther than that. Didn't the records go back much farther than that? Wasn't there a longer trail behind?
Yeah, so, I mean, we want to put as much out there as quickly as possible so we can get more information. We just thought it was important to at least have the last 3 years.
Well, once you do this and you don't go, I can't imagine you're going to go back and upgrade the histories so much. So I'm just wondering how effective it's going to be.
Oh, no. We can continue to add to the history. It's just a matter of getting something out now.
I see.
And, yeah.
One of the other problems of the database that I think I experienced, if I'm talking about the right database, is that when you search for a house on a street and you gave the street number, you got every house on Green Street on every community in Champaign County.
So our website will only be for Cunningham Township.
Just Cunningham.
Yes,
Right.
Cunningham
So what
Township.
you're referring to as a county website?
Yeah, county
We've
website.
launched our own website just for Cunningham Township.
I say so.
Soft
This is-
launch, I should say.
This is going to be like a different pool of information then.
Yes.
Okay, right.
Or a subset, but it'll be better.
Subset, all right.
Said better. I also wanted to talk currently where we are in terms of an office with the revaluation coming up leading into the quad. Currently, we're about 19% done with the field work. About a quarter of that information is already into our database. We're hoping to be at 24% late February, but that depends on kind of the weather, because when we originally thought about this, it's thinking about someone being there 5 days a week, spending 8 hours a day in the field, and then you'll find out, oh, well, there's 3 days you can't be in the field because it's too cold, or there's snow, or it's so many different things that, if I had to be honest, I didn't put enough thought into coming from a warmer state. So now it's the thing of trying to say, okay, how can we still get this right? Because the goal for us is not to try to catch it as it's going further in the future. It's fix it before it gets too far out of hand. So that way, after the quad, we can actually break things up into quarters the way it's supposed to be. So a quarter of each part of the city is done. A year piece, a year. So that way it's not us spending a lot of time trying to do reassessments all at one time, all hands on deck. Hey, can we get interns? Anyone wants to volunteer? It doesn't have to be that if we can now get the data in the correct way. We have the website. We have a system that will allow for the growth of this data. Now we kind of just need help getting the data. Was there anything you wanted to touch on?
No, are there any more questions?
Jared?
Jared.
Do we have an expectation to see a proposal for purchasing this Eagle Eye software? Is that what we're talking about this?
Next month.
I didn't get context of
Yeah.
why
So,
we brought it up.
So next month, hopefully you'll have a contract to look at.
Okay.
Questions? Eric and then Mary Alice.
Is it feasible for information on building permits to automatically become available to the assessor? Because
We're already doing that, actually.
you're doing that, okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we get all the permits, we both on paper and in an Excel spreadsheet.
Mary Alice?
So I'm trying to figure out with the new software, Wayne and I had discussed this afternoon. So you call it software, but you also call it a flyover. Can I call it a flyover?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm assuming it takes something equivalent of like pictures, and then it gives you some kind of file in which you can work with. Is that right?
Yes. Yes. As they fly over, it's a lot of different files. I don't want to
That's
just say
fine.
it's just
That's-
pictures, because it's
yeah,
kind of more
yeah, yeah.
complex than that. I know Charlie was present for one of the presentations. It's giving you the exterior view of a property
From all angles.
from all angles.
Okay, all right, so just for lots of pictures of a single property. And it does it for everything, so they hand over a file that has all these different files that give you the ability to basically kind of see the outside skeleton. How about that? Is that okay?
I
Oh,
can-
you can work with that? Okay.
can work with
All right, good. So does that cut down, is that the equivalent of going on a field visit?
By law, actually, yes.
Okay, so by law, you could remove the field work if you had access to the flight data that is gathered.
Okay, that's a two-part one. Because I want to say yes, because that would be probably partially right, but I would say mostly no.
So let me give you an example.
Oh, hold
Nothing
on, wait.
replaces actually going out into the field. A perfect example of that would be the situation that you guys dealt with on a zoning level with that garage, right? That had been converted. If someone from our office had actually went out, it was very clear that that garage is being used as living space. If you just go and look at it, so nothing replaces actually going out, having boots on the ground. Nothing.
So I guess I'm trying to figure out kind of the balancing act here. So it sounds really like a cool piece of software, And I'm figuring, what is the use case here? So are you going to have somebody kind of survey and, sorry, let me rephrase that. Are you going to have somebody go over the files and update the property cards? And then in addition, are you going to send somebody out to do kind of a in-person
It's
evaluation?
It'll be more of a mix because the initial foundation in trying to get the system the information it needs, we can use the flyover information to build into the system.
So does
But
it
to
say,
check
okay,
it,
sorry.
oh, it's fine. To check that information, it's better still to put eyes on it. And that's only because every property, even though it flies over, it may give me 8,000 good photos and give me 2,000 bad photos. So of those 2,000 bad photos, I don't want to just put the bad information in. That then will trigger something to tell you, hey, this sketch is not lining up, or hey, this looks different. So it'll give me a flag to say, oh, there are 30 properties that didn't match up. Let's go out here and look at these 30. Instead of me saying, here are 100 cards, let's see if these 100 cards have issues. I could just focus on the 30 that actually need my attention at that time.
So is the intention to kind of match it up with the existing cards, and if there's something that's out of sync, so to speak, then to go visit those properties? Or is it a combination, and you're going to use the flyover data and schematics?
Combination.
Combination. And it saves you time in terms of entry because you can look at it and say, okay, well, this is a 2002 story house. I can go ahead and update that records, but then
2002 stories?
2,000 square feet plus
Okay.
2 stories. Sorry, I said that too quickly. But then I'm going to do kind of I'm going to drive by and see if there's anything else there. Because I'm trying to figure out this, I'm hoping will save you staff time in terms of going out, recording everything that you need to record, because you've already had an opportunity to review the file, update what needs to be updated there, and do a final check. Is that, I'm just trying to figure out the workflow.
Where
here.
I really believe it, in my opinion, it saves time is when it comes to validating sales. Because the sales actually come from the county and then they're imported into our system. We kind of, at first, were taking their word on sales, and now we're kind of looking at the sales slightly different, where it's like, if I had this particular software, I could pull up whatever I could find online, Googling the address. I could now pull up the imagery of this particular property, and I can make adjustments to all those sales if there are 300 sales, 400 sales, almost without having to go out into the field. So the field people, as far as getting the information that's on the ground, maybe a certain measurement to a porch or a deck that was added we didn't know about, and all of those things, more so the sale part of it, it'll cut in that time. Because the field people will still do their field work. But in terms of people like me, Wayne, or anyone higher up in administrative, they can't, okay, I don't want to say, I'm too busy. Hold on, let me finish. I want to be available if someone has a question or someone needs help with something, or there's a taxpayer that doesn't understand their senior exemption. With us having to go out into the field and also help our staff to pick up those properties, that's taken away from the time I'm in the office. And I would rather be in the office where I can answer that phone. I can still give you the assistance you deserve, but I never stopped working because I could look at that property from where I was. And if I'm not sure, then I pass it on and say, hey, can I get a field visit on this? Does this make sense? Because when I looked online, there are things that don't correlate. Now it needs that field visit. So it's more of when I say a really good combination, it's just figuring out how they will really work together. It's kind of going to be more of a trial and error because I've used the software. We've been in the field, but it still would be new to Urbana. So it's that thought.
Okay. Any other questions? Sharice?
Okay, what's the cost of the software?
So we're still, we don't have it all the way quite yet, but we'll have it for you next
It'll
month.
be next month.
Okay, and will there be any privacy issues regarding this eagle view thing? Will
No,
people's
no
will-
more than data that's already collected by various third parties.
Okay, say that again.
No more than what's collected by other various third parties.
Okay, no, I'm asking that because that could present an issue as far as, you know, will taxpayers have the right to opt out of being eagle-eyed, or what's it called?
Eagle view.
Eagle-viewed, yeah. Will there be any, will you require, or will there be needed some kind of permission? Just, you know, or anything like that? That's the first thing that popped in my mind with, you know, you taking pictures of my house.
I think the question is, can you demonstrate it next month? So that we can see exactly what the software
What it
sees
does.
and does.
I think that can be arranged.
Okay,
But
that
it
might
may
answer
not-
a lot of questions that we have.
Something.
Okay. Well, do you
We'll
have
have to
any
work
others?
on the logistics, but I think that can be arranged.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, yeah, if there's if, you know, if you're using it, can you record it and bring it in and show how this works?
How it
or
works.
on some level? Just because the first thing came to mind with me was invading someone's privacy, one way or the other. And the other thing I wanted to ask, because you said you get all different views and different sides.
Yes.
So is this like a drone?
No, it's a plane.
It's a plane.
It's a what?
It's
It's a
an
plane.
actual airplane.
Oh, okay. So it's an airplane. It's a spy plane.
No, it's like
No,
it's like a Cessna.
no.
No, I'm just trying to get an idea. Seriously.
No, it's like a Cessna.
Oh, okay. So it's like a Google Earth plane.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, Google Maps and Bing actually already uses companies like this to get their imagery.
Okay. So my other question then is this: so how do you get different angles of the house?
They,
Like if you're looking straight down,
because
you're seeing a roof. So
they
how
take the pictures
how
at
will
an
you find out
angle.
if it's three?
they take a picture at an angle as well. So like Bing already has that capability where you can kind of look around in a 3D way.
Mm-hmm.
So they're in the sky, but they're also like taking the picture like that.
Okay. Okay. I'm just trying to understand how.
I think a picture's worth 1,000 words. We'll look forward to seeing a demonstration. Dennis, did you have a question?
Oh, I was just going to say that we already are, you can always look at your house and your neighbor's house on Google Earth, and there's nobody who's ever come by my house to ask for permission. And that's worldwide.
Thank you.
Anything else, William?
Nothing from us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Any unfinished business? There's none listed here. Under new business, we have resolution number T 2020-01-001R, which is a resolution authorizing an agreement with the City of Urbana granting a sidewalk easement, and this is related to the MCOR project.
Yeah, so essentially to do the renovations to Green Street that started on Campus Town and have continued to Lincoln and now will go downtown. The city needs both a temporary easement, which is not before you tonight, it does not need town board approval, as well as a permanent easement. The resolution essentially lays out, it's a very small corner of the township property that is abutting the library property, so it does not abut a private entity, and that will be needed to complete the MCOR project, and there's a small piece of compensation for that.
Is there
Any
a
questions?
Is there a motion? Mary Alice?
I move that we accept resolution number T 2020-01-001R, resolution authorizing an agreement with the City of Urbana granting a sidewalk easement.
I'll second.
Moved by Mary Alice, seconded by Bill. Any discussion or questions?
Jared,
Was that a question?
I heard someone on the phone.
Is Dean?
Dean, are you?
Yes,
Are you-
I'm with you.
Yep. Dean's
Dean
with
is
us.
with us.
Beat me up, Scotty.
Remotely. Any questions other than that? All right, all those in, does this need a roll
You
call?
should do a roll call vote.
Yeah.
Okay. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustees Brown?
Yes.
Hazen?
Yes.
Hersey?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Roberts?
Yes.
Wu?
Yes.
That motion passes.
Great. We look forward to a new Green Street in front of our property.
It's going to be a transformed Green Street.
Yeah.
Next is resolution number T 2020-01-002R, which is a resolution authorizing Cunningham Township Supervisor to pay funds to Champaign County Regional Plan Commission for consolidated social service funds fiscal year 2019.
So you've seen a resolution similar to this in the past. Essentially, as per our auditor's recommendation, we operate on a cash basis, and if something is dispersed into the fiscal year, we bring that disbursement back to you. There's been at least one other like this. In the case of Regional Plan Commission, there's a misunderstanding about the process of requesting installments, and so they made a second installment request buried in the first installment request. And we did not catch this. We thought it was a first installment request. We installed, and then we sent notification that we have not received a second installment request. And they responded at that time that they began to look into it, and after some investigation, we realized that they had already made the request. So essentially, you, town board, set aside $18,000. They are only requesting a portion of that, their first installment, which was requested, and the second installment. They did not use the full grant last year. It was closer to about $9,000 or half of that grant, but we had only dispersed about a half of that, quarter of it. So we would like to your approval to disperse the second installment, which they had requested back in February of 2019.
Is there a motion?
I'll move we approve resolution number T 2020-01-002, resolution authorizing Cunningham Township Supervisor to pay funds to Champaign County Regional Planning Commission for consolidated social services funds FY 2019.
Moved by
Second.
Bill, seconded by Sharice. Any further discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustees Brown,
Yes.
Hazen,
Yes.
Hersey,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
and Wu.
Yes.
That motion passes. Item C is a motion to go into closed session. I'll need a motion. Please read the two items there.
I move that we go to closed session for a review of closed meeting minutes pursuant to 5 ILCS 122C21 and to discuss pending litigation and probable or imminent litigation pursuant to Section 2C11 of the Open Meetings Act 5 ILCS 122C11.
I'll second that.
Moved by Jared, seconded by Eric. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustees Brown,
Yes.
Hazen,
Yes.
Hersey,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
and Wu.
Yes.
That motion passes. So we'll be going upstairs into closed session, and then we will come out afterwards.
I'll pass this one.
not done yet. Okay, we'll need a motion to come out of closed session.
So moved.
Moved by
Second.
Jared, second by
Eric.
Eric. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. That motion passes. Next up, are we ready to move on to the next resolution? Is resolution number T 2020-01-003R, which is a resolution authorizing intervention and participation in Board of Review and Illinois Department of Revenue proceedings concerning OSF Healthcare. There's a correction. The title is System DBA Heart of Mary Medical Center. Is there a motion?
I'll make a
I move-
motion.
Okay, moved by Dennis,
I'll second.
seconded by Mary Alice. Any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmembers Brown?
Yes.
Hazen? He hasn't called back in. Hersey?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Roberts?
Yes.
Wu?
Yes.
That motion passes. Final item is resolution number T 2020-01-004R, resolution authorizing intervention and participation in Board of Review and Illinois Department of Revenue proceedings concerning, and the correction is the Carl Foundation.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Moved by Dennis, seconded by Sharice. Any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustees Brown?
Yes.
Hersey?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Roberts?
Yes.
Wu?
Yes.
That motion
Ha-
passes.
Hazen? No, he hasn't gotten back.
That motion passes. With no further business before the Cunningham Town Board, this meeting is adjourned. There's this to sign. Okay. All right, next meeting up is a joint meeting of the Urbana City Council, Cunningham Town Board. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustees Brown?
Here.
And Councilmember Brown. Hazen? Hersey?
Here.
Jacobson? Here. Miller?
Here.
Roberts?
Here.
Wu? Here. Mayor Marlin?
Here.
Supervisor Chenoweth? Is Wayne sticking around? No.
Is there anyone who wishes to address the special joint meeting of the City Council and Town Board? Okay. Dr. Underwood? This is the time. This is right before. Yes. Would you like to come up now?
Good. I'm glad they have this because I could not print mine out. I was having a problem with my computer. So this is what y'all had printed online. Is this what you had printed online here? You see?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, yes, this is it. On page 2 here, outreach proposal, where you have Black Ministerial Alliance. Yeah, and I wanted to do the correction. It's the Ministerial Alliance of Champaign-Urbana and vicinity, because it's not only a Black Ministerial Alliance. I used to be president of the Ministerial Alliance of Champaign-Urbana and vicinity, and it's never been all Black. But I'm so happy to see that the Ministerial Alliance is included in this. And I just wanted to do that correction.
Okay. So noted. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Does anyone else wish to address the town board and Urbana City Council? Okay. Next up is a presentation on consolidated social service funding allocations.
Good evening. Danielle, Mary Alice, myself, and Alyssa are setting in place the process for this year's consolidated social service funding, and we wanted to bring the process to you before it gets launched to get any feedback or priorities or that type of thing. So the memo starts out with a brief history of the programs, noted that we've been doing this jointly since 1996. And in last year, the committee met and kind of outlined priorities and criteria, which seemed to work pretty well. So we're carrying the majority of those forward for this year. One thing that we did note as we went through the process that there were a lot of agencies that served a similar population. So we thought if they would collaborate and come together with a joint application, we would look at them with a higher priority, because maybe we could serve more if the agencies, kind of broke down those barriers and came together. And then applicants who will leverage matching funds we'll be looking at with a higher priority as well. Budget considerations, do you want to touch on this piece?
Sure. So the Township Supervisor's Office, obviously we're talking about next year's budget, not the current year's budget. We're proposing $100,000 in the budget for consolidated social service funding. And the city proposal from city staff is to contribute from the general fund and community development block grant funds for $80,000, so the total would be $180,000. I just want to note this does represent a decrease from last year's budget, and I'm happy to answer questions about that. But what we're seeing, as you know, as wearing your town board hats, is that we've been deficit spending for a number of years. We've increased our general assistance budget, and our rental assistance is, I think, a very successful and robust program. Township, as we develop our strategic plan, is looking to fill various gaps in housing, so we still have inadequate support for the homeless. And we also have inadequate support for folks who don't have sufficient income to meet our rental assistance program requirements. So we are exploring with the city administering tenant-based rent assistance. We are exploring with RPC administering permanent supportive housing, where we provide the case management. And I'm anticipating some staffing increases if we want to manage those programs and fill that gap. So that essentially when the goal is when someone walks into our office who lives in Urbana, who has an urgent housing need and income qualifies, we're not just picking people with no income or exactly this income, but we're actually able to provide a spectrum of services to house the homeless, as well as to support people with modest incomes, increase those incomes over a couple of years. So as a result, I look at $175,000, which is what we've been spending, and essentially that is multiple staff persons. It's multiple programs at Township that we could launch with those funds, and we feel the need to step back in terms of the social service funding and be able to make sure our core programs and our core needs for Urbana residents are supported. And then to the extent to which Township has additional funds, a grants program I think is totally appropriate and can help to extend our services. But as you know, it's much less targeted in terms of its impact, and it really, I think, is the kind of gravy on top of what the township's core programs are.
So the timeline we structured, it runs similarly to what it did last year, only we backed it up 1 month. And we did that so that it could be in step with the consolidated plan and the annual action planning process that the grants division is going through right now. So that hopefully when the consolidated plan is adopted by council, these programs will be a part of it and adopted as well. Our outreach proposal is similar to last year. I think we had a broad distribution list and hit everyone. Thank you very much for the correction. So we will do outreach again this year like we did last year. I didn't hear any complaints of somebody who said they felt like they'd missed the funding go round. So I feel like it was pretty broad. And then finally, and I think Danielle and I both can speak to this piece of it, we had set aside money from last year for a rapid response funds, and we've been trying to determine the best way to design that program, but yet keep it targeted towards rapid response, but yet not make it so cumbersome, like on my end of the deal where I would have to, amend a consolidated plan, which can take, 6 to 8 weeks. That's not really a very rapid response. So as I write our consolidated plan this time around, keeping that in mind that we need to have that flexibility built in to be able to respond to quick needs. Danielle and I have talked about this, and I have asked that when a need comes forward, we just look at it together jointly, because there may be ways that the city can participate, maybe not necessarily with general funds, maybe there's ways that we can do it with our federal funds, maybe there's private grants or foundations that I'm aware of that we could write grants together to help serve the needs of the residents of Urbana. So did I hit all our points?
Yeah, I think so. I did want to just point out, I was hoping, I sent out a memo to you. I just want to cover one of the questions on the table for you today in this meeting is areas of priority. As you will see in page 1 of the memo that Sheila distributed is evaluation criteria. So in addition to filling gaps, prioritizing township program participants, meeting material needs, tangible benefits, there are 5 areas listed in the program assessment. I just want to name them here. And then I want to speak to one of those in particular and encourage you as a partner to help me and Township think through how to address that. So the 5 are homelessness and housing insecurity, and accessible and affordable housing opportunities. So housing, paths to employment, harm and discrimination against vulnerable populations, immigrant rights groups may be here, groups working against discrimination. So the 3rd is that harm and discrimination against vulnerable populations. 4th is specifically around reentry. As we know, we're in the process of, there's moves to decarcerate that will mean more members of our community coming back to the community and being able to support that transition process. And then 5th is, 6, I must have counted wrong. 5th is children and youth safety. And then 6th is food insecurity. So housing, employment, discrimination against vulnerable populations, reentry, youth, and food insecurity. Those are the 5 areas. The question on the table is that still the 5 that we want to focus on. And in particular, not necessarily to lift this above the others. I know you know that I have pushed the housing issue for a while, and I consider it one of the most deeply felt needs that if you can't meet housing, it's difficult to meet the other needs. But I do want to make you aware, and I only sent this memo out today because I've been trying to work with DHS and our state rep and other folks to try to get more information, and nobody seems to have more information about what this is going to look like in the state of Illinois. So what I can share, as you probably know, is that the Trump administration, along with USDA, have now formalized, as of December, work requirements for the recipients of food stamps that would start April 1st. And what that means is that people receiving SNAP who are single and between the ages of, it's not single, they are childless, and between the ages of 18 and 49, who are not disabled would need to work 20 hours a week to receive their SNAP. So it's very similar to the changes in TANF. This was actually a Clinton administration change, but states found a workaround by providing exemptions. And so basically the Trump administration is removing those exemptions and not allowing the states to have the rights to provide those exemptions. So why this is important to Township is that almost all of our general assistance participants are impacted. We have 91. We typically hover around 100 at any given time, and we anticipate within the year we may serve up to 400 residents, right, in a given year on general assistance. I want to point out that food subsidies make up 42% of their annual income. They survive on $3,180 a year, which is our historic subsidy, general assistance, and then 192 for singles. And most of the folks we're working with are single residents with no children. That's $2,304. So essentially, their food support is $6.40 per day. And to get that $6.40 per day, they would, starting April 1st, need to work 20 hours a week. Now, this may sound great on the surface because you could ask the question, why don't people who are able-bodied be able to work? But there's a lot of catches in this. First off, it's no one can answer my question, so I went and read the actual statute of who is considered disabled. And the answer is, if you're federally considered disabled, which none of our participants are because they're seeking SSI, they're not considered disabled, and therefore they're not automatically exempt from this. It is up to the state to determine whether or not they're disabled. So does that mean they have to go through a process? Is that a month-long process? What does that look like? We're in the process of getting medical verification for folks of their disability. So it's very, very messy for our disabled residents. It is not clear that they're not going to be forced to work. For folks who are in our community work program, which is the other track that we have, I can tell you that they struggle to do 20 hours of work a month. And a lot of that has to do with homelessness, not having a place to clean up, mental health, substance abuse, criminal justice backgrounds. It creates a lot of, it takes a lot of case management for us to support people in doing those 20 hours a week, a month. To quadruple that, it's very late, to quadruple that overnight, it feels impossible to me. And I'm concerned that what will mean is that people who are barely surviving will be hungry and food insecure very quickly. So I guess I do want us to consider this piece. I wish I had a lot more information going into the setting of priorities. We do have food insecurity as one of our 6. But I think as we move forward, I love the food bank. I love the gardens and all the people that we support, but kind of generalized grants to them is not going to actually make sure that, the 400 general assistance participants this year don't starve. So I want some help to think about how do we target, and certainly we can discuss this in the committee too, how do we target and make sure that we're addressing the food insecurity? And honestly, a township's responsibility is to fill gaps, and it may be that with some of the savings and going down in our general our grants program, we will need to provide some kind of supplementation for food because we simply can't let people go hungry in our community. So just wanted to highlight that one particular issue because it's going to be a deeply felt need of our participants very soon.
And then finally, in the past, City Council has supported youth and pathways to employment and education as one of your top priorities. And I guess I'm asking if that's another priority for this upcoming year that we should consider as we evaluate these applications.
Dennis.
Well, I think, Daniel, you brought out an important focal point due to the change in law that we're going to be experiencing in the very near future. And probably of the 6 areas here that are listed, I was wondering if children, youth, and safety would be maybe one of the ones that we could relax on, partly because there is such a strong program in the Regional Planning Commission, Safe Routes to School, and they do a lot of work seeking for grants and things which support youth safety. It may not cover everything. I mean, you might be also talking about safety in home environments, which is not that part of it. But, that's one thing we could look at perhaps is relying more on other agencies to cover some of the aspects of it.
Mary Alice?
Two of the immediate ones that come to mind are, is it YAC? Is that right? Youth Assessment Center? And we've given them money before. I'm not sure if youth safety and well-being is perhaps the correct phrasing that we should use. I do think that YAC is a good use of resources in terms of helping young people move forward when they've had a misstep. The other one that we've talked about, and I'm not saying that we should fund or shouldn't fund, but I'm just kind of bringing forth the agencies that we have funded. So we do, is it Big Brothers, Big Sisters that we've done, and we haven't done them recently? What's the
Neighborhood
busing
Connection
one?
Center.
Neighborhood Connections, absolutely.
Boys and Girls Club.
Thank you, Boys and Girls Club. Those are the 3 that come immediately to mind that are specifically focused on youth. So maybe that needs to be rewritten, or maybe that is not a priority that the City Council and Township want to focus on this year, but I just wanted to bring that up.
And just as a reminder, this year we changed the way that we're funding Don Moyer, and we're doing it on a per Urbana resident served. So they're providing transportation services, and then we will reimburse them for any Urbana residents so that we make sure these funds are targeted directly to our citizens.
Bill?
Yeah, I know Urbana Neighborhood Connections is a popular program, and we've always funded them pretty substantially in the past. It seems like it would be a big hit to them to lose that. I think you mentioned in your memo, I don't see it in front of me right now, but that you might have data to support some decisions. Do you have any data on youth employment in Urbana over the summer or anything like that compared to other areas?
I do not. Do you have anything on youth employment?
What I have is, since we do run an employment program, and this is not specific to youth, is that the dollars that come into our community to support employment and pathways to employment are significant. They primarily go through WorkNet and RPC, and they and generally speaking, if there was one area where I feel like it would make sense for us to pull back is looking at employment broadly, because I feel like WorkNet, for example, our programs, we've not attempted to move into employment services because there is DOORS, Department of Rehabilitation Services, which has robust funding for it, as well as WorkNet and RPC. So speaking with youth employment, I think the issue is the small number of youth that we're able to serve per the dollars. So, what I'd like to see the community do is to take on discrimination, and I also like to see government agencies play a greater role in supporting area youth during their youth, with seasonal work opportunities. And I know, both the cities and parks have talked about this. So I feel, my opinion is that social service funding to fund youth employment opportunities there's a lot needed that serves a very small number of youth, and that really existing employers that are doing seasonal work really need to step up to the plate and play that role to fund that need through their existing budgets.
Also attached to your memo was the funding that was given out in this community through a variety of agencies, through what they call the local funders group. And you'll notice on average, it's about $6 million a year that goes out to various programs. And I felt that was important to share with you guys because you really struggle trying to serve, and we have this little tiny pot of money and you want to try to help everybody. And I wanted you to understand that there's a lot of money that's going out through this community in a variety of places. Mental Health Board, United Way of Champaign County, the Community Foundation of East Central Illinois, the City of Champaign. A lot of us within the social service programs, we serve across Wright Street. And so I'm glad to see that. And I think youth employment programs, a lot of that is covered in some of these other agencies. I don't know what they'll do next year, because it's like with you guys, everybody sets their priorities, but.
Go ahead.
Just yeah, that was really helpful to have that, especially the Community Foundation. I didn't have that list before. I have looked at the Mental Health Board funding before. I just have to emphasize that Urbana Neighborhood Connection Center is 100% Urbana students and residents served, and that's one of the few that we've ever funded that can claim 100%. So I really want to take a look at that, and I'd personally like to keep that on our list. But if you have, I haven't visited there in a while, so if there's something I don't know that you want to raise, that's fine too.
No, I think one thing that was implemented last year was this fee for service for Urbana residents, and we launched it with things that were easily identifiable, like Meals on Wheels. If they could show that they'd actually delivered to an Urbana residents, we would reimburse them for that. And I think as the committee gets back together again, that's one thing we might look forward to expanding to make sure that these Urbana dollars stay in Urbana. While we recognize there's a need community-wide, we have such limited resources.
I also wanted to let the council know that over the last few months, Danielle, Sheila, and I have been meeting regularly with Representative Ammons and Mayor Finan of Champaign and city staff with a focus on housing, specifically an emergency shelter for the homeless, and also how to increase the number of vouchers being made available to people through the Housing Authority, and focusing on issues of repair and renovation of Homestead, which is a single-room occupancy facility right here in Urbana. And so there's been a real focus on the housing issue from various perspectives. And also we're looking at how to focus our CDBG funds more directly toward neighborhood improvements, which supports the housing in the neighborhoods as well. So we're targeting other funds hopefully toward the housing issue as well. Jared?
One question. Did you calculate how much, if we were going to try and provide that kind of assistance to make up for a loss in food vouchers, RGA assistance, or RGA program recipients are receiving, how much that would be?
That's a great question. I can certainly get that for you, but essentially it's, at any given time, if there's 100 people, and there's about 50 of them that are on the work program, and they're losing $200 a month. So if we do that calculation, that gives us a sense. Now, the issue is that we simply, that would almost double our general assistance were we to fill that gap for them. And we're certainly not in a position to do that. So the question is, are we putting out fires as people, right now, for example, people call us when their food stamps run out, $6.40 a day. I mean, you can eat beans and rice, and if you're really careful, you can eat on $6.40 a day, right? So people run out, typically we see by the fourth week, even with food stamps, and then we have partners where we call in food referrals and have drop-offs at people's homes, and we connect them to Meals on Wheels, which they do have to pay for, right? But we do have some free services. So the question is, are we doing triage or, and most likely that's what we would need to do. We need to, those who expressed a need, we would either have to have a partner where they're directly meeting those participants' needs and not kind of peppering it around in Champaign-Urbana, or we would need some way to meet those needs through our emergency fund. Just for the record, I did set aside monies in other grants and in emergency assistance that we've not used at the township level, and I'm eyeing those as things that we may be able to use to supplement on an as-needed basis.
Because I'm asking that because we don't specifically say what we're going to do with the emergency funds when we set them aside. We say there's 50,000. We have this to use for whatever the emergency is, right? So we can, I think, keep that in mind as part of our tools.
Yeah, in terms
obviously, nothing we're going to do is going to replace a government-level program from the federal government. I mean, there's just no way we can possibly be in place of that, even in our small community. Shift subject, real quickly. I didn't see our awards from last year in this, and I know we're not probably at that stage yet. Sheila, do you recall what we gave to the Youth Assessment Center last year?
I think it was 5,000. Is that right, Alyssa? 4,000 to 5,000. We have the annual report done that we can just email to you and then make it available on the city's website to show where we're at this far in the year and how the funds were utilized. One thing we did not capture this past year that I think we're going to ask for in this next round of applications is how they use the money to leverage other funds. You know, so I think that's important for us as a community to know that if we're giving them $5,000, but that $5,000 gives them access to an additional $20,000, that's pretty big to that agency.
Sure.
Yeah, and we just haven't asked for that information in the past, so we will moving forward.
And I know I'm always bringing this up in every committee that I'm on, but in particular with this, I know you guys are asking for our thoughts on this, but I feel like I don't have the tools in front of me to really be offering useful advice. I know we talked last time about creating some kind of performance metrics or effectiveness metrics. Did we end up creating any of those things, and is any of that information available as far as, hey, we gave this money to these people, these many people were helped, we can make some kind of measure the effectiveness of those dollars?
Right, somewhat. We apply what they said they were going to use the money for. As they request reimbursements, we make sure that they utilize the funds the way that they indicated they would, and then we report on that, and that's what will be in that annual report. So that's why setting these priorities are important, because you know, Danielle's group, the township, kind of uses them to fill gaps that they're not able to provide. We kind of use it to fill gaps that council feels as a priority in our CD commission. And so that will help agencies as they apply know where to target their applications and the priority of that.
Okay.
So at this point, are there other, the question before you is, do you want to see these priorities continue? Would you like to see others added, some deleted? Do you want to emphasize some over the others? What is your feeling at this point? Sharice.
Yeah, I was looking on the list too, and when you're saying, you know, you want anything, are there any food banks that currently get any kind of grant money, or do you do that for food banks?
Eastern Illinois Food Bank gets funded through this grant for a few years.
They did last year.
So Garage,
Yeah.
So the Garage also gets funded, and they have a free food truck on Fridays that's seasonal, where they do free food distribution. We send a lot of township participants to them. They also provide the township fresh veggies on Saturdays that we distribute Mondays and Tuesdays during the farmers market.
Okay.
So that's been helpful as well. And I believe there's, we used to support Wesley Food Bank, but they didn't apply last year.
Okay, I was just wondering because you were talking about food insecurity, and I've done the beans and rice. But yeah, it can be. So I was wondering if food banks got any money to step in, you know, to be able to fill that gap as well, rather than a particular entity actually buying groceries for somebody, or like you said, you have to pay for Meals on Wheels. And I know that there are a lot of non-perishable foods in the food bank that a person can make, can get some pretty good meals with from, if possible. So it's nice to know that there are some food banks on this list as well, or at least food security entities. Okay.
Mary Alice?
I will say that one of the barriers that we have right now with food banks, funding food banks, is that a lot of them will not keep track of the income amount. And so because of that, we don't usually give them high consideration because we want to fund people who are, who are extreme, don't have any funds. I don't know if because of the situation that we have right now, if we want to not necessarily waive that, but take that into consideration for food banks that are distributing in Urbana, like physically located in Urbana, because generally speaking, people going to food banks don't have enough money to buy food. So I just want to throw that out there as one of the reasons why some of the food banks don't even apply.
Well, I was thinking in terms of because of these new regulations that are coming up where people are, Danielle was saying, how difficult it is for some people to even do 20 hours a month, let alone 20 hours a week. And that's going to increase the number of people that will need food. And if you don't have any money, a food bank is a very good place to go. If, in fact, we fund some of those institutions, it would be nice to maybe make sure that they are on the list to receive some funds, even if they don't necessarily keep track of, their special arrangement with Walmart or Meijer or who else, whoever.
It's the income participants and how
Right.
much money they earn that they're
Right.
not keeping track of.
Okay.
Yeah, and for the federal reporting, we have to know that, so it would have to come from Danielle's pot of
Yeah,
money.
I mean, the food banks could be funded through township for that, and one of the things we might want to add to that outreach is specifically looking at food banks in Urbana and reaching out to them, and we have a list of all the food banks and their schedules and their criteria at the township, so we have we use that all the time. We're constantly responding, even under the current rules, for food insecurity requests. So we can add that piece, and if the council and town board would like us to assume that basically it's Urbana residents who are extremely low income who are being served, then we can make that clear to the food banks that we wouldn't require them necessarily to get that income information from their visitors.
Well, it sounds like the committee is recommending adding criteria that emphasizes collaboration, leveraging funds, and then is there a consensus that you're happy with the 6 priority areas? Very good.
I'm happy with those areas. I'm wondering if we should, I'm looking at the calendar and wondering if we should push our decision-making back a little bit. I mean, it's now going on in April. These new regulations will be effective as of April 1st. Probably sometime like, a little later, May 1st or so, we would really have a much better idea of the actual impact.
This is the unfortunate issue, is that we need to release the application in a timely manner, basically this month. So we wouldn't be able to release the application after the April 1st. I think we should assume that food insecurity is going to be a major issue in our community, because everything points to that, and we haven't seen any message from the state otherwise.
I'm only talking about pushing back our decision-making process.
Oh, I see.
After we receive the applications, so that we can consider the actual funding, the actual grants, in the context of how big this other issue is going to be.
Right. If possible, I'd like to keep it in line with the consolidated plan and the annual action plan calendar and process, keeping in mind that as we move forward, this USDA and federal rule is not going to be news to any of our agencies applying, and I'm sure they're already thinking through the impact that that would have on them. Plus, if we see that it's having a bigger impact on our community than we kind of anticipate, we also have those rapid response dollars that we could come back in, August, September, saying, hey, this is a much bigger impact than we realized on that. So, most of the agencies operate on a July 1 through June 30, so it's really helpful to them to know that they have this funds coming. To push off the decision-making can be harmful to them sometimes, and especially if they're leveraging other dollars. They need to have that commitment from us so that they can use it in other grant applications.
I should correct myself, it's actually the 10 priorities that are on the front page here, the assessment criteria.
Yeah,
Bill,
there's-
you had a question?
Yeah, just for clarification, in your memo, you said required to work at least 20 hours a week. Is it 20 hours a week or 20 hours a month?
For SNAP, it will be 20 hours a week.
A week. And then later it says 20 hours a month somewhere. What was that? for?
20 hours a month is what the general assistance requirements are.
And that's what it currently is?
It's 20, and it will change to
okay.
24 February 1st.
Okay, I see, thanks.
Is there any other information council members need or would like to have? Jared?
Sheila, can you send me the youth assessment center application from last year when you're sending that stuff? Thanks.
Mary Ellen?
Mary Alice?
The other item that hasn't explicitly been talked about is the two financial pieces. And so last year, we had done the 4,000 was the minimum that people could apply for, and the second piece is the amount of social service funding that we would be committing towards this year. So 4,000 would be the minimum grant, and then 100,000 from township, and is it 75 from the city or 80?
80.
It's 80 from the city. So that, to me, we did the priorities, we did the process. That's the third piece there.
Thoughts?
What was it last year? 200?
225 total.
It
225?
was 225, although we did do some set-asides and so I think it ended up being closer to like 213.
Gotcha.
And we had 800,000 in requests, so there's going to be a big demand. So I think the clearer we can make what our priorities are, the easier it'll be for the agencies to focus their funding request.
How did we come up with our 100 and our 80?
Ours 80 has been set for a while between the general fund and CDBG, at least 3 or 4 years that I'm aware of, and then Danielle.
We're dropping to 100
Yeah.
because
So
of
the
wanting to keep more
township
for
used
GA.
to, yeah, the township used to contribute closer to it. I looked at the history, looking back to when I was also on the town board, and essentially the township was at 150 and the city was at 150. And then there was a drop down to $100,000 at one point for both. And then partly because the township had such a low general assistance role level due to the practices of my predecessor, which honestly, I don't consider them to be in line with the rules of township officials of Illinois. The roles dropped to 26. So there was, it made sense in some ways to balance out what the city was dealing with what the township had in terms of surplus. That said, as you know, we've been spending through our surplus, and I think I really want to make sure that we can we can use those township dollars for some of our core programs in the next year. So it's hard for me to argue without some kind of tax levy or some additional income beyond our lovely angel donor fund, which is only in the thousands of dollars, for us to really look at continuing to stay at such a high level as we were when we had 26 general assistance participants. So it does mean cuts in funding. That said, what I would say from my seat of expertise is, one, if we really should be looking at, are you serving Urbana residents? Second, we should be looking at, are you primarily getting your dollars from the state, and we're just a tiny drop in the bucket compared to the state dollars that you're receiving? So I think there's a piece. We should look at, we have a mental health board and a whole taxing body. Mental health is a very big priority in our community, but we also have a kind of a taxing revenue source for that concern. I would say the same thing around employment. I think it's very hard for us to have impact through social services on employment. It would be my recommendation not consider employment as a priority, because I feel like there's so many local, federal and state dollars that come to our local community around that issue, and it's hard for us to have impacts. So, I think material needs that are urgently felt that affect everything else, like housing and food, is where I would recommend we put our dollars. And then there are areas of vulnerable populations like reentry, immigration, and children and youth, where I would consider those to be secondary but important priorities. So the first two is like housing and food. And then the second is looking at some of those vulnerable populations and helping to support them with smaller grants. I also think it's worth asking whether government or quasi-government agencies should get funded through this small pot of money as it shrinks. I really think, the Park District was not funded this year. We've stopped funding the school district. RPC is a strong partner. There's no issue there, but they do have a lot of grant funding that comes from other sources. And so is it appropriate for us to continue to support government and quasi-government organizations with funding? So those are some of my opinions on the matter as the township supervisor. I think that's where we can focus and do the best bang for our buck.
Okay. That being said, I would say that I'm comfortable with the 100 and the 80,000, even though it's a reduction from last year, seeing as the shift in priorities.
And we can come back to you next year at this time to talk about the following year, but we can also do a review of what's going on now. And if, we see that we're not having the impact on food insecurity that we thought there was going to be because of the government changes, then, we can revisit who we funded this year and how much, and maybe make budget amendments or whatever.
And use rapid response funding that we've set aside in other pots to support that.
Okay.
The other question, speaking of rapid response, that has not been answered is we have $38,000, I believe, from this year. Is that going to be carried into next year, and we're going to put this, more money on top of that and let that grow, or are we going to have it just be a certain amount set aside each year, and then we'll determine as needs arise if that's what we want?
Eric?
I think, I did a quick, calculation on the potential magnitude of the food subsidy changes, and in the light of that, I would suggest letting the amount in the Rapid Response Fund, adding a new 50,000 to the 38,000.
Yeah, it's about 50,000.
In order to cover the potential impact. Yeah.
Right. So 50,000 on top of the 180.
On top of the carryover. Yeah.
Carryover. Okay.
So the 50,000, just to be clear, comes from something outside of the 180, or is it? It's from the 180, so we only have 130,000 instead of 220,000 from last year. Is that right? Did I do the numbers right? Oh, we had 38 left over, so we had like 190 something that we distributed.
I heard Eric say that we should set aside was it an additional or within?
Yeah, because if you take this $190 a month and multiply it by how many months there are in a year and by how many people are potentially impacted in the worst case, the money's going to go pretty fast.
So that's an addition.
Yeah, right.
Different.
So that makes a total of $218,000 for next year. If you're adding the 38 from this year to the 180 that we're proposing. Is that right? Is that what you're wanting?
Yes, that's my intention.
And there's different programs and processes. So the Consolidated Social Service Fund grants has this particular process that we have before you with the committee, and with the rapid response grants, essentially, we don't disperse any contracts without town board approval if it's township money, or city or administrative approval, depending on what level it's at. So I think that I would fold this into the budget conversation you're mentioning around the timing, Eric. And I think when we get into the budget conversation for township, certainly I'll have a lot more information about what it's going to look like, and whether or not, in addition to including this in a priority and supporting food banks in Urbana, we could look at if we need to do an additional allocation. So what I'm hearing is thinking about that as a kind of set aside in the 2021 budget that the town board would be going through, and I think it's a really good idea.
All right. Thank you for providing direction.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mary Alice, for serving on this.
Yeah, Mary Alice is great. Super. The partnership has really been stellar between the city and the township, so I just want to thank the staff and Mary Alice for your participation.
Thank you. With no further business before this joint meeting, this meeting is adjourned, and then we'll move on to our third meeting of the evening.
Third or fourth? Technically third.
Let's say third. And that will be a meeting of the Urbana City Council. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Council members Brown. Here. Hazen. Hersey.
Here.
Jacobson.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Roberts.
Here.
Wu.
Here.
Mayor Marlin.
Here. Next up is approval of minutes from previous meetings of December 9th, which was a public hearing, tax levy public hearing from December 9th, and also minutes from December 16th. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Jared, seconded by Sharice. Any corrections? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion passes. Are there any additions to the agenda? I hope not. D, presentations. We don't have any presentations. We have one public input card from Reverend Dr. Evelyn B. Underwood regarding the Dr. Ellis subdivision sewer problems. She's not wishing to address the members, but states that they're continually concerned about the Dr. Ellis subdivision sewer problems. We have no unfinished business. Go on to reports of standing committee. Mary Alice?
On behalf of the Committee of the Whole, I move approval for resolution number 2020-01001R, a resolution approving amendment number 1 to a mortgage, promissory note, and regulatory and land use restriction agreement.
Second.
Moved by Mary Alice, seconded by Jared. Any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Council members Brown.
Yes.
Hazen. Hersey.
Yes.
Jacobson.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Roberts.
Yes.
And Wu.
Yes.
That motion passes. Reports of special committees. Reports of officers. Carol?
I have a brief report to share. I'm passing it out. As some of you may know, the Gather development got underway this morning with some demolitions, and so I thought it was timely to share with you what the construction traffic plan is for the project. So there's some text on the one side, and it's a memo from Ben Holzhausen, who's our right-of-way technician in engineering and public works. But the more interesting piece is the little map on the back side, which shows that all construction traffic will be entering and exiting the site from Busey Avenue. They will not be allowed to go south on Busey, south of Clark, but they'll come off of University. None of the traffic will enter through Lincoln. And then after they get a little farther underway, we will be closing Clark Street to through traffic, which will help them stage their construction. So I'd be happy to answer any questions about that, but we'll be sharing this with the public as well.
And the contractor will be holding a neighborhood meeting soon?
Yes, that hasn't been scheduled yet, but soon, just to talk about, what's ahead. Mm-hmm.
Timeline? Have they given a construction timeline for this? Now that they've finally started?
Here comes Lori.
Sorry, Lori. Even though I know you were coming up anyway.
Not that we're aware of.
Oh, I could have done that.
Demolition will be ongoing for the next few weeks at any rate. And I did want to let council members know that the rewritten liquor code, Chapter 3 of our city code, has been distributed for internal review to staff. And after they finish reviewing within a couple of weeks, we plan to bring it to city council in February, hopefully early February, for review, and it'll also be, of course, available to the public at that time as well. So it'll be several weeks process there, but we're very pleased with the rewritten code and look forward to your comments as well. Okay. Any other reports of officers? Okay, moving on to new business. Resolution number 2020-01-002R, resolution of protest against a proposed text amendment to the Champaign County zoning ordinance. CCZBA case 945 AT 19, which is expanded noticing.
Good evening, members of council. As there are several related Champaign County zoning ordinance text amendments, I'm going to present them together because they're related. So I'll be addressing cases 945, 946, expanded noticing and buffer, 947, conservation recreation zoning district buffer. Those three were all in the same first memo, as well as case 971, financial assurance requirements. That was in a separate memo. And these are all proposed amendments to the recently passed solar farm zoning ordinance amendment.
A point of order. Mr. Clerk, could these be done in omnibus fashion?
These are, yes, they could, and with two motions, and then a roll call is going to be needed anyway.
Okay.
The issue is that with these resolutions of protest, it's better if you just move the resolution as it's written, and then if you don't want to force the county board to do extended vote, just vote no. Okay, don't do a motion to defeat the motion to protest. It gets too complicated. So just move the motion, and you could, move to omnibus the four of them. We do a unanimous voice vote, and then we have a roll call for the four of them. That's fine.
So the motion should be stated. They move approval of the resolution of protest, and then the correct vote would be no.
Vote
Okay.
no, yes. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, Marcus.
Okay. I am as confused by it as you are. So
It's perfectly.
that going ahead. So cases 945 and 946 are alternative versions of a proposed text amendment to address site location, notification to neighboring municipalities, long-term leases, public hearing timelines, comment periods, and continuation of operations of solar farms that are proposed. All of these amendments were prompted by representatives of some Champaign County municipalities who had expressed a desire to have more input during the county's going forward approval processes for proposed solar farms that are proposed to be near their municipality. So after last year's solar farm text amendment went through, and even during that process, county municipalities, some of them expressed concerns that they weren't being given enough time to review plans. They brought up situations about long-term leases that weren't going to get approved by the municipalities as they felt they should be. And they also wanted to be certain that they would have adequate time to review the proposals. So, and some of the municipalities also wanted a larger buffer between their boundaries and a proposed solar farm. The current version allows them to site as close as half a mile. Some of the municipalities wanted a larger buffer of 1.5 miles. So if you look at case 945 and 946, the table in the memo, which might be a little larger for you, they are identical except for case 946 increases the minimum required buffer from 0.5 mile to 1.5 miles between a municipality and a proposed solar farm. The other four parts, A through D, are in both of the cases. So they wanted to make those options available to the county board to vote on, either increase all of the notification time periods or increase all the notification time periods and require an increased buffer. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, all right, I won't belabor that. The Environmental Land Use Committee for Champaign County discussed these proposed amendments and requested that Champaign County Planning and Zoning staff put two alternatives together. Staff didn't just do it out of their own desire to create more work for themselves. And the county board will hear these cases at its February 20th meeting at the earliest, which will give them a good amount of time to hear the city's input. And then case 947 proposes the elimination of the current 1/2 mile buffer requirement between a proposed solar farm and a conservation recreation zoning district. So there might be a park in that zoning district, or there might be open space, or there might be a home. It's a zoning district. It's not necessarily a strict use district. County planning and zoning staff reviewed that current buffer requirement and determined that that was not really necessary, that that buffer wasn't important. So case 947 is to remove that 1/2 mile buffer between a proposed solar farm and a CR zoning district. The staff report goes into great detail on each of these parts, A through D, as well as case 947. Moving into the discussion section, regarding cases 945 and 946, staff doesn't anticipate a negative impact to the city or its ability to plan or manage growth or development. Staff does acknowledge that case 946 requires an applicant to apply to the county board for a waiver and be granted that waiver if an applicant wants to locate their solar farm closer than 1.5 miles to the city's corporate limits. The proposed amendments regarding notification of municipalities are not relevant to the city because the county already notifies the city of special use permit applications, which would include those for proposed solar farms. Regarding case 947, staff does not anticipate a negative impact to the city or to its ability to plan or manage growth or development regarding this case. The proposed deletion of the 1/2 mile buffer is not relevant to the city as it affects only county conservation recreation zoning districts. On December 5th, the Plan Commission discussed the proposed text amendments. This discussion resolved with the decision that the city would be able to deal with the additional burden of working with an applicant who wanted to site close to the city, if that was their desire. And the city could discuss that with the applicant and make their feelings known to the county about whether or not they would support a waiver from an applicant to the county board to site closer than 1.5 miles to the city's boundaries. The Plan Commission felt that other smaller county municipalities might not have the staff resources to deal with that additional burden of pushing back against a proposed solar farm. So they felt that they should not recommend protesting either of the proposed zoning amendments, either to require the additional noticing language or to increase the buffer to 1.5 miles. So the commission voted unanimously to recommend defeating resolutions of protest in cases 945 and 946. Additionally, there was no discussion about Case 947 because it only applies to county conservation recreation districts and would not impact the city. So the Plan Commission also voted unanimously to defeat a resolution of protest in Case 947. In Case 971, which is the proposed text amendment for increasing or modifying the financial assurances required for a financial institution that would be issuing letters of credit to a proposed solar farm. Staff feel that it's of minimal interest to the city of Urbana because it will not affect zoning and land development decisions within the city's bounds or within its 1.5 mile extraterritorial jurisdiction. The proposed changes in this amendment include the option of referencing the Kroll rating system and requiring a minimum corporate debt rating of A- under this system. The current language only refers to the Standard & Poor's or Moody's reference systems. Staff does not anticipate a negative impact to the city or to its ability to plan or manage growth or development if this amendment goes through or if it does not go through. The proposed text amendment does not directly affect the use of land or impose any additional burden on the city. Again, on December 5th, Plan Commission discussed this proposed text amendment. Plan Commission's interpretation was that one additional financial institution at least would be able to provide financial assurances. Therefore, the Plan Commission voted unanimously to recommend defeating a resolution of protest for Case 971. In all 4 of these cases, let's see if I can get this to go. Okay. Here you see the summary. Plan Commission voted unanimously to recommend defeating resolutions of protest for all 4 of these cases. Staff concur with those recommendations. And just a little reminder summary, if you don't want to protest, move for a resolution and then defeat that protest. If City Council wants to protest, move for a resolution of protest and then approve the protest. And the whole omnibus thing is over my head, so I'll let the city clerk deal with that.
Technical questions for Marcus.
Can we not consider the 5th one in with these?
The 5th one is for non-conforming structures and issuing a preemptive variance. I am glad to present that information. But
Would you like to have that one presented as well and do them all? Can we do these
Accept.
first? Okay, let's do these first. All right. Any questions? Mary Alice.
Okay, so, A, this is a lot, so thank you.
You're welcome.
You did a good job of boiling it down. I'm going to attempt to boil it down even further, just so I am clear.
Sure.
So there's really 3 issues here that other municipalities were interested in the county revisiting in terms of their zoning rules. 1 is the buffer area, 2 is the timeline in terms of reviewing the proposal, and 3 is the ability to review any lease that's over 5 years. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So the only thing that I see that may be of interest to the city is a special use permit. And I'm not suggesting that it definitely is. I would like to know if we are notified of a special use permit, do we have any action that we can take, any kind of protest that we can take, or is it just that we are notified?
We are notified. We can't protest them, but we can offer comments.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Other technical questions? Would someone like to offer a motion?
I'll do that one.
You're going to move approval?
Well, eventually, but I'm going to actually propose that the committee consider resolution number 2020-01-002, a resolution of protest against a proposed text amendment to the Champaign County zoning ordinance. Not going to read that one again. Resolution number 2020-01-003, another resolution of protest. Resolution number 2020-01-004R, another resolution of protest. that one with the CR zoning district buffer, and resolution number 2020-01-005R, another resolution of protest for financial assurance requirements with the credit thing, be considered in omnibus fashion.
Moved by Jared. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Seconded by Dennis. Further discussion. All those in favor of considering these in omnibus fashion, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? Since it's unanimous, we will then go on.
So, voting on those in unanimous fashion, I would move approval.
Second.
Moved by Jared, seconded by Mary Alice, and the appropriate vote would be no in this case. Will the clerk please, Bill?
Just on the separation from county conservation recreation district, you said it's not relevant, but we do have county conservation recreation adjacent to the city on the Kickapoo Rail Trail, so
Yes.
I'd say it probably is relevant, but whether you want to increase, whether you need more than a half mile, what would it do? It would reduce it to 0?
It would reduce it to 0.
The wind farm could be right there.
Solar farm.
The solar farm could be right there,
Solar farm.
but it would still have to be a half mile from the city?
Correct.
Okay.
And there is also the contiguous urban growth area that is around the municipality that it could also not site within. So the Kickapoo Rail Trail is probably buffered by the fact that that area is protected by that CUGA area also, even if it loses its protection by the conservation recreation half-mile buffer that it would lose.
Okay.
Multiple layers of buffering.
Okay, thanks.
Dennis?
And then just for clarification, then if the motion is to approve and then we defeat it, what it allows the county board to do, is it the board or the zoning commission, is to make the decision with a majority, simple majority.
Simple majority.
They don't
Correct.
have to have a extreme majority or a high majority.
Correct.
Super majority.
Super majority.
Are you ready to vote? Okay. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Council members Brown,
Yes.
No.
Oh, no.
Hersey,
No.
Jacobson,
No.
Miller,
No.
Roberts,
No.
Wu.
Nope.
That resolution of protest was defeated.
1 through 4.
1 through 4. Last item is resolution number 2020-01-006R, resolution of protest against a proposed text amendment to the Champaign County zoning ordinance for nonconforming structure preemptive variance.
Thank you. So this amendment has nothing to do with solar farms. It is of minimal interest to the city of Urbana because it will not significantly affect zoning and land use development decisions within the city's 1.5 mile ETJ. Champaign County planning and zoning staff believe that an applicant should have the option to request a variance to rebuild a non-conforming structure before it is destroyed. This would reduce the amount of time that a building, when it is destroyed, has to wait until it can be rebuilt, because sometimes months go by before a case can come before the Champaign County Board or the ZBA. Zoning Administrator Hall stated that the request to rebuild a non-conforming structure is one of the most common variances that is requested. At its November 14th meeting, the CCZBA voted unanimously to forward this proposed amendment to the Environmental Land Use Committee for approval. Essentially, often a case will come to the ZBA where they're asking for other variances, and when staff go out there to look at the property, they'll also find that the structure on the property is non-conforming, and the occupant or owner of the property says, I didn't realize that, can I get a variance to rebuild the property if it's damaged? And normally you can't get a variance for something like that until after it's damaged. And then they're stuck waiting for several months while they go to ZBA and then to county board for that variance. Zoning Administrator Hall would like to have the authority for the ZBA to grant a preemptive non-conforming structure rebuild variance. City staff do not anticipate a negative impact to the city or its ability to plan or manage growth in this case. Any variance granted by the county board should be considered by the city if and when the land on which that non-conforming use is located is proposed to be annexed into the city. However, if that land is annexed into the city, that variance does not apply to the city. And if the city so wished, they could grant that a similar variance in the process of negotiating the annexation agreement. Or they could say, no, we don't like that preemptive non-conforming structure variance, and we will let you wait until after the structure is damaged for you to apply to the city to get that variance granted. Plan Commission on December 5th voted unanimously to recommend defeating a resolution of protest for this case. And City Council has the following options: to defeat a resolution of protest, to defeat a resolution of protest contingent upon specific provisions, or to approve a resolution of protest. Again, as Mr. Roberts stated, under state law, if a resolution of protest is passed, it would need to be approved by county board with a supermajority to override that. And that is the end of the presentation.
Questions? Mary Alice.
So if this is approved and somebody is granted a preemptive non-conforming, I realize that it doesn't necessarily meet the standards for the city, but at the county level, does that mean that they have that forever? There's no time frame, but they are forever basically grandfathered in with the ability to rebuild in that similar structure?
That is correct.
Okay. And, well, my other comments are more discussion. I just wanted to confirm that. Thank you.
Sharice.
Could you give me an example of such a situation that this might be applied to?
Sure. Probably an easy one would be if somebody had built their house too close to a property line, and if a tornado came by and knocked it down, past, I think, 50% of the fair market value of rebuilding it, they would have to move the house outside of the required yard unless they were granted a variance to rebuild it in the same place.
Okay, is it more likely that in that kind of situation, the city council would grant such a variance based on the fact that the house had been like that all the time and it was a, an act of nature that took it down, otherwise blah, 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 blah?
So in the city, non-conforming structures cannot be rebuilt if they're damaged more than 60% and of the repair value of the fair market value at that time. So I believe it would come to Plan Commission.
She meant to say county board.
Did you mean a county variance?
Just a
or
reminder,
city
this is we're considering items that the county board would consider.
Mm-hmm.
So we haven't processed those cases in front of the county board, but based on the fact that the county zoning administrator is asking for this change, I believe they do process a lot of these cases, and I don't know what their approval rate is on them. But I think the issue is if someone is missing a house, they would like to rebuild that house as soon as possible and not wait the 7 months it might take to get through the county process.
Okay. I'm just trying to understand.
And that preemptive variance, it still goes through the public hearing at the time that it's being granted. So if a neighbor says, I don't really want that house that close to the property line, they still have the opportunity when the preemptive variance is granted to express their concerns.
Bill?
So the preemptive variance would be issued before there was any damage?
Correct.
Okay. And then if it was annexed to the city, we could annex it as is and call it non-conforming, but they would lose their preemptive variance.
That is how I understand it.
So
And
then
it's-
I would be willing to take any sort of legal advice on that.
It's possible that once it comes into the city, it wouldn't be non-conforming, because often our rules are more permissive in terms of lot size and whatnot than the counties.
Okay, but if it was non-conforming to our current code, they wouldn't automatically have a preemptive variance just because the county issued a preemptive variance?
That's correct.
Okay.
I had a
Any
question.
argument from the attorney on that?
No.
Okay, thanks.
Mary Alice?
That was my question.
It occurred to me, what about the buildings, the former Pomology Grove buildings at the corner of Windsor and Philo Road? Are those currently non-conforming?
I have no idea.
Okay. Dennis?
Maybe I need to wait for discussion.
Okay. Any further questions?
I
Jared?
got a motion.
All right, we'll get a motion on the floor for discussion.
Okay, I'll move approval of resolution number 2020-01-006, a resolution of protest against a proposed text amendment to the Champaign County zoning ordinance, CCZBA 948 AT 19, non-conforming structure preemptive variance. That was for approval.
Second.
Moved by Jared, seconded by Sharice. Discussion. Mary Alice?
So my thoughts here are the following. If this was before the city council, for city council zoning, I would absolutely vote no on the proposal. But my thought here is this is county, and we have different zoning rules than county already. I don't think it's a good idea for them, but if they want to do it, I'm not going to stop them, but I do want to kind of make it clear that I would never approve or support something like this at the city level. They're having something in perpetuity is, in my opinion, not good planning. Well, I'll just leave it there, so I know other people want to say something.
Dennis?
Well, it was pointed out, I mean, this concerns me as well. I would say, and if it was going to be something that our zoning Board of Appeals would be discussing, I'd be very much against it. One of the ZBA members for the county writes a paragraph about their concerns, which I won't read all of it, but it says also that the ordinance is that the board is prohibited from granting these variances for non-conforming structures, except for those that are specifically provided in Section 8, which provides granting the variances for expansions of non-conforming uses and provides granting variances for the reconstruction of non-conforming uses that have been destroyed. But if the home is still there, so that there is no provision in the zoning ordinance for granting a variance for an existing structure because it is non-conforming. And then he says, the board is not authorized, legally he's talking about, legally the board is not authorized to erase a non-conforming status of existing structures. We can only provide for the expansion or reconstruction. But here the board is not authorized to change the status. And so that was actually in violation of Section 9.1.9 of the ordinance. So then the zoning administrator says, well, we're just trying to make things easy for everybody. So I have a conflict between making things easy for people and actually following an ordinance which is known to all. And especially, I mean, it would be fine if they were going to allow a variance based or a waiver based on the fact that there was damage. But to do it before any damage is even occurring or expected is, I think, somewhat of an affront to the ordinance structure and the rule of law. And if, maybe if it was a house, I would, they would grant a waiver of this freely. But what if it was a big barn, or something like, what if it was a pig barn? Would you really necessarily want the pig barn to be preemptively grandfathered in forever? So I'm not going to support this. Maybe everybody else thinks it'd be just great to make it easy for the county to make its own decisions. But based on the legal question of, are you going to support an ordinance? I mean, we had discussion about, in other circumstances about, supporting decisions that are being made by other bodies concerning the legal standing of, of properties in our community. And I think it's unuseful for us to support what I think is a bad decision being requested by the zoning administrator.
Any other comments? Eric?
I think there are, Urbana used to be known as the city that told everybody else what to do. We passed all kinds of resolutions that were very grand. And we don't do that so much anymore. And I think that's a good thing. I think there ought to be a very high bar to resolutions that tell other people what they ought to do under circumstances that don't really affect us. So I share Dennis's view, and in fact we've had cases quite recently come before us, which cases of grandfathering in a structure that had not that had been put there illegally, and we said no, you can't improve that structure. You've got to actually abandon that new use. And so I know clearly what our standards are, but I think we've expressed this, and I want to reinforce what Dennis said. We've expressed this in the public discussion, but I will vote no on the resolution of protest just to in recognition of the fact that it's not really our domain.
Further comments? Bill?
Still thinking about different cases, but so is this similar to the special use where they would notify us if they're going to grant preemptive variance within the ETJ?
We would not be notified of a variance case. I mean, we would be notified, but it is not the type of case that we would issue comments for. We get a typical list every few weeks of all of the cases that are coming up in front of them, but
the only example I can think of within the city where people have had strong opinions, I remember, is in the case of billboards. If a billboard that's in an inappropriate location is non-conforming and it was to be destroyed within the city, we definitely wouldn't want to be rebuilt or give any kind of preemptive thing on something like that. So I'm trying to think if there's anything equivalent like that within our ETJ we'd have to be worried about, because if you do it preemptively, then they would basically have whatever they have indefinitely, but I can't offhand think of anything like that. So I'm leaning toward defeating the resolution.
Charisse?
Because I'm still trying to understand this. So what this resolution basically says, or what the CCZBA are actually trying to say, is that let me just try to think of an example. You have a business in Urbana, okay, that's going to move onto county land, and let's say that business is using cow manure to make beds or something. So, the smell of cow manure, if we say that this is okay, and that all they have to do is get a special use permit or something, that will be in perpetuity perpetually used, we could forever have the city of Urbana smell like cow manure beds.
I am glad to say that that is not correct.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand.
It's so if the pig barn was built 5 feet too tall, okay, just not your pig barn, but the pig barn that Mr. Roberts talked about, and then it burned down completely, the county's zoning ordinance would normally say, okay, you have to build it only to the proper height, not to the previous height. If they had gotten a preemptive variance to allow it to be built to the original height, for whatever reason that they were able to convince their zoning board of appeals at the public hearing, because it still goes to a public hearing for that applicant to argue for that variance, then they would be allowed to build the pig barn to its previous height in the year 3000.
Okay, so what I want to know, what if we didn't want the pig barn and we're all glad the pig barn burned down?
Then the county zoning board of appeals could say, they couldn't say you can't have a pig barn. They could say it can only be this high, because the pig
So
barn.
we still have to deal with the pig barn?
Yes.
Okay, so if in fact.
If it's in the county.
If
If it's in the county, I mean, but what if, the county pig barn smells up every place, right? Because, let's be honest, that's what pigs do. So what I want to know is, would the city of Urbana be required, or would we have any say-so at all in dealing with the pig barn being rebuilt, period? Would we have any say in that, or is this is just, so what we're doing, are we giving away some of our power
We would
to the
not
county
have-
of Champaign?
We would not have any say either way, whether the
Except
amendment was
that
passed or not.
If that is in the, if it is in the city of Urbana, the pig barn, then we have to say, you can't build it to, we don't have to give them the variance to do it. Is that what I'm saying? I'm asking,
variance
that's
would
why I'm
not-
asking questions.
The variance would no
Jordan.
longer apply if it's
Right.
annexed into the city.
Oh.
And we would never annex a pig barn into the city anyway. So.
I know, I'm thinking worst case scenario, just,
Dennis?
Yeah, we're not advising them how to vote. We're just requiring them to have a majority, more than just a simple majority. In other words, okay, they can do it if they want, but what we're asking is that if you're going to do it, and we don't think it's a good idea, we're just going to ask you to have 7 votes instead of 4. That's what we're doing. We're making them vote a little more positively to make that variance happen. We're not saying they can't do it. We're just requiring them a higher standard to make that thing happen. That's all we're doing.
If you choose to approve the resolution.
If you approve the resolution, which is an
Mary
approval.
Alice.
All right, so I appreciate everybody's insights because it's got me thinking. And I had not thought about the billboard use bill. And so when I've gone back and forth on this, I think there are areas north of Cunningham that might fall into that issue, but I couldn't say off the top of my head. So I guess at this point, I would be in approval of the current motion because that does concern me. I do recognize what Eric is talking about. I agree. We have to be careful of what we can and cannot influence. But I do think that items such as billboards, other structures that maybe are an eyesore to the city are something that we should at least ask the the county board to carefully consider, because this is for anything. It's not a particular thing. It's not a pig farm. It's not a billboard, right? It's anything within their zoning ordinance. It's not even a particular question that's above right now. It's just that somebody could apply for it and then it would be there. It would still have to have approval. Absolutely, yes.
We have a motion on the floor. Staff is conferring at the moment. Any other discussion item, question, or discussion points? Bill?
It's kind of a back to a question. When they approve a variance or a preemptive variance, is it just a majority board vote to do that?
Yes, it's just majority on variances.
Okay.
Did you have further information to add?
Just in reading the resolution, section 2 on the second page, I think where it says defeat, we meant to say approve, but I need to read this again to.
Okay.
Because normally a resolution would be written to say approve there. So I just want to make sure, however you vote on this one, that it is.
I believe Lori's correct.
So we have a motion on the floor to approve the resolution. If you vote yes, you will be protesting. If you vote no, you will defeat the protest. All right.
But
Yes.
I think the intent is right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is the functional significance of which way we vote? If we vote to support the resolution of protest, does that make any difference in how these matters will be handled by the county board and the county zoning administration?
Well, the ones we already voted on said approved, right?
Yes, they do.
So why don't we just amend this one to say approve, and then we vote on it the way we did the last time?
I agree, because I think what Eric might have been bringing up was if we pass a good resolution, then that forces them to maybe have to have the supermajority.
Oh, okay, so this will have a functional import.
That's why I'm saying
Require them to have a supermajority.
I agree
I'll move
with
to
Mr.
amend
Brown.
section 2 of the resolution to replace the word defeat with approve.
I'll second.
Okay.
Moved by Bill, seconded by Jared. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. 'Cause the others do say approve. Okay, good. Okay, are we ready to vote?
And so the vote then would be, the results would be the same effect by voting similarly, that by voting no approves,
No will defeat.
no will defeat,
No will defeat, yes will approve.
Yes will approve.
and the approval is to approve that a supermajority is required.
Only that they have a supermajority in their vote on this particular
Right.
thing, not that they have a supermajority for their ordinance.
Will the clerk please
Yes.
call the roll?
Councilmembers Brown,
No.
Hersey,
Did you get confused, Therese?
Yes.
No to defeat, yes to approve. They're asking us to defeat it.
The staff is.
Yeah.
Did
but
you vote yes?
I vote yes.
Okay.
Jacobson,
I have listened to my colleagues and thought about it. Yes.
Miller,
No.
Roberts,
Yes.
Wu.
Yes.
By my count, I have 4 yes and 2 no. Then this resolution is approved. Protest stance, yes.
Thank you.
All right. Last item on the agenda.
You have two items left.
Oh, 2 items on the agenda.
Board appointments.
Yes. Board and commission appointments, I have several tonight. To the Design Review Board, I recommend appointing Dustin Allred for the term ending June 30th, 2020. He's a lecturer in the Department of Urban and Regional Planning. He previously served on the Mixed Office Residential Development Review Board, and he currently serves on the Sustainability Advisory Commission. Travis Scheiss, for a term ending June 30th, 2022, is an architect. He's a 9-year resident of Urbana. This is also for Design Review Board. Graduate of the U of I. He feels passionate about the community, wants to help it grow and thrive. So let's take those. start, well, let's just do them all. I have Market at the Square Advisory Board, David Sam, for a term ending June 30th, 2023. He's the owner of Dragonfire Pizza, serves on the Champaign Chamber of Commerce Public Policy Board, and he's being brought on in the new position that you created a few weeks ago to provide an understanding of the challenges and a perspective that food trucks face with regard to Market at the Square. And then lastly, for the Sustainability Advisory Commission for a term ending June 30th, 2020, Jacob Torres. Mr. Torres has a master's degree, or a master's of science in biology, and is a PhD student in entomology at the U of I. And he has a personal interest in urban ecology, urban sustainability, and also serves on the Tree Commission. Is there a motion?
All right, I guess I will make a motion to approve the 1, 2, 3, 4 appointments that are offered by the mayor for the various boards. The Design Review Board, Dustin Allred, to the term applied, indicated. Travis Scheiss, to the term indicated, to the same board. And David Saam, to the Market at the Square Advisory Board, to the terms provided. And so Jacob Torres, to the Sustainability Advisory Commission, to the term provided.
I'll second.
Okay, moved by Dennis, seconded by Jared. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you. That motion passes, and I want to thank the members of the community for volunteering for these boards. Our last item on the agenda is we will need a motion to go into closed session to review closed meeting minutes pursuant to 5 ILCS 122C21.
I move going into closed session to review release of minutes.
A second.
Moved by Eric, seconded by Sharice. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmembers Brown?
Yes.
Hersey?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Miller? Roberts?
Yep.
Wu?
Yep.
Mayor Marlin?
Yes, that motion passes, and we will go into closed session and adjourn after we come out, so there's no further business. closed session.
So moved. Second. Oh, we don't have a clerk. There's the clerk.
We should repeat the motion.
9:44. Okay.
Would you like to repeat the motion for the clerk?
Oh, yeah.
I move that we come out of closed session.
Second.
Oh, second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion passes with no further business before this body. This meeting is adjourned.